she is a first-time guest here. I am greatly appreciative of her joining me, especially on short notice. How are you doing today? This It's very early for you. That's the other thing. I feel so bad. It's very early for you. How are you doing this moment? And just to give the audience your name, Dr. I butcher your name, so don't forgive me if I mess this up. I'm going to ask you for it. Dr. Jemima Pierre.
Jemima.
Jemima, thank you. Dr. Jemima Pierre. Thank you for this. Thank you for joining me. Okay, how are you doing this morning?
I'm okay. This is the first time I'm hearing my voice because it's so early, but it's it's good. I'm good, thank you.
It's
How are
okay.
you?
I'm doing fine. You should hear me sometimes in the morning. Oh God, man. When I was in the States and it's like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. and the first words that come out is like this deep, very
See,
white. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
But you sound perfectly fine. You're
Okay.
fantastic. And just for the audience, Dr. Jemima Pierre.
Jemima, Jemima.
Jemima, damn it. I will
It's a
get that right.
French pronunciation. It's Jemima, really. If you think about that, I'm Haitian American, so
Okay. Jemima. Okay. I'm going to try to get that right. Dr. Jemima Pierre. I will put a note in it until I have you on a few times where it
right,
sticks.
right, right.
Dr. Jemima Pierre, she's a distinguished faculty of arts professor of African American and African diaspora studies in the Institute of Race, Gender, Sexuality, and Social Justice, and faculty associate in the Department of Anthropology in the University of British Columbia, Vancouver. She is research associate at the Center for the Study of Race, Gender, and Class at the University of Johannesburg. Wow. Um, you also write for Black Agenda Reporter. Do you still do editor at
I
the Black
do. I'm
Agenda?
one of the editors. Yes,
Okay.
I don't write as much as I should, but I am one of the major editors of the
Well, it
weekly.
sounds
I
like
work with Margaret Kimberly. Yes,
she is awesome.
yes.
Margaret Kimberly is awesome. That woman is fantastic. It sounds like you have a massive resume, though. So it sounds like you may not have a huge amount of time to write. It's like give yourself a break. I brought you on to have a conversation about Haiti.
Oh,
So recently, it has come out, and I saw this, I think, the other day, that the U.S. has indicted Jimmy Barbecue, and I'm going to mispronounce this last name, even though I'm going to go for it. Hope springs eternal. Cherizier,
Shalizier.
Cherizier. Okay, Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier. They've indicted him. Now, I remember you are familiar to me, and I think it may be because I read your article when your article first came out, because I was covering this story for the radio station. And, when we had a guest on who was making this argument effectively. And by the way, thank you for the prep work for this. It helped greatly. Your article and the other article associated with it, and there was one more that I found that was associated with it. Thank you for that. Um, One of my guests, Robert Patillo. Robert Patillo is half Haitian, and he was pointing out. He says, "Look, the mainstream media is getting this wrong. This is not a quote unquote gang war in the way that they're trying to say it's a gang war. Gang war kind of undermines what is taking place on the ground. What it is effectively something akin to a civil war, where you have various sides that are, in some respects, people who are representing people in protests, as opposed to just quote unquote gangs, which is what they're being marginalized down to." Let's start at the beginning, though. How did Haiti fall apart? And I guess I'm not sure where we should start on this. Maybe back during the Clinton era and move up from there. I mean, we have about 30 minutes. So I want to be able to, at the very least, hit the indictment and what's taking place. So I'm going to let you start where you want to start on this.
Okay. That. Thank you. Well, first of all, there's no civil war in Haiti, so let's be clear. There's a small group of armed and a number of armed small armed groups. Up until 2 years ago, did not have that much power. In fact, Ecuador has major gang issues.
Yes, they do.
Jamaica was under state of emergency for the past 4 or 5 years. Turks and Caicos, we have the cartels in Mexico. This comes nothing close to what's happening. So let's be clear about that. So the sensationalism around Haiti is important to keep in mind because it's a very long history. And for people who don't know, I'm going to start at the beginning, which is Haiti is the second oldest country in the Western Hemisphere. Haiti became independent in 1804, long while there was still colonialism and slavery throughout the Western Hemisphere. And Haiti's history is unique in that it is the first free nation in the Western Hemisphere. While the U.S. still had slavery, you had the enslaved Africans actually rise up against their owners, the colonial masters, defeated Napoleon's military, the most powerful at the moment, as well as defeat the Spanish and the British, who came to try and take over this land that was France's most lucrative colonial possession with the
Mhm.
enslaved Africans. And so there's that history. And, Frederick Douglass, African American scholar and also abolitionist from the 1800s, who the U.S. actually sent to Haiti as to take a piece of land from Haiti back in the 1800s, said that Haiti has never stopped paying for winning that revolution.
Right.
So there's that. What's happening in Haiti now is something that's a long. So part of that is Haiti is one of the only countries out in the region that is not fully captured by the U.S. and Western imperialism. And alongside Haiti, you have is Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba. All
Right.
these others are neocolonial states. And Haiti has always fought. And so the U.S. has always had Haiti in its crosshairs. When Haiti became independent, the U.S. did not recognize Haiti for 60 years. And there was a blockade against the country by the European powers who still had slave plantations throughout the Americas. So there's that. In 1915, the U.S. the Marines occupied Haiti for 19 years on behalf of Citibank to take over the Haitian customs and so on and so forth. Dissolved parliament, removed every kind of government that the country had, and took the Haiti's gold, put it
Mhm.
on ships, and sent it to New York. So we have that. And so the moment that we're in right now is what I call the second occupation. And it's really interesting, actually, because I watch all these alternative media and I watch some of these key colonels, military officials who actually were part of the 2004 coup d'etat against Haiti under the George W. Bush administration.
Interesting.
In 2004, the US, France, and Canada removed Haiti's president. They went to his house. He was elected. He had the majority of the votes. They went to his house, loaded him onto a plane, and flew him to the Central African Republic. This is actually well documented, and I don't, democracy now has gone off the rails. But if you go to democracy now, they have the archive, because I remember waking up February 29th and having someone call and say, I've been kidnapped. The president got a phone snuck to him, and he called in, and Amy Goodman, and I forgot which U.S. Senator, she's from California, Maxine Waters, called in and said they've kidnapped Haiti's president. This is in 2004. But before that, in 2003, in Ottawa, and people can look up this thing called the Ottawa Initiative, where in the winter 2003, the Liberal president of Canada, Jacques Chrétien, held a meeting in Lake Meech, in his resort area in Canada, where they brought in all these Europeans, Americans. Um, they basically decided that they needed to get rid of Haiti's president.
Right.
His name was Jean-Bertrand Aristide. He had been brought into power in 1990. Groundswell. This is the first major revolution after the first revolution that you had, where after a dictatorship, the people brought in and brought him into power. This was a mass movement. Within 9 months, the CIA had removed him from power. He came back, and he was brought back by Clinton, which is a whole other conversation, in 1993, because they were afraid of so many migrants coming into Haiti. So Clinton wanted to do something. So they basically said you could come back if you go with the economic policies that the U.S. wanted, which were the neoliberal economic policies that opened up Haiti to fleecing. Right. And Clinton would later, by the way, apologize for destroying Haiti's rice
Too late.
industry,
Too
right,
late.
for
Too
his
late.
Arkansas
Yeah.
farmers, right? And so in 2003 they meet and they decide they're going to get rid of this president. There was no Haitian present, so you have these Westerners. And Dennis Paredes, who was the Canadian foreign minister at the time, later on would give an interview and said that meeting was about whether or not what did he say? He said that whether or not sovereignty is whether sovereignty is something that uh, is necessary for a country like Haiti. And he says this, and I will find the video because he does say that. So
Because openly opines this. Hey,
right,
maybe these black people
right,
don't get sovereignty.
exactly. And so part of that is, Haitian sovereignty has always been on the line, and Haitian people know this. And so you have in 2004, you have where the U.S. actually was not going to leave it the chance, because in 1990, when Aristide won, they had their puppet, a former World Bank person named Marc Bazin. They thought he was going to win, and there was a groundswell. People came in and they voted, and so they decided. And I always say Haiti's a laboratory, the same way I think Palestine is laboratory for West Asia. I think they decided that they would not allow elections to chance again, and I think from then on, they decided to not allow free and fair elections, as they always say, right? But in 2004, in February 29, 2004, and I have to say that's exactly 200 years since Haiti declared independence. And I'm not, I'm very sure this is not by accident, right? To remove him from power. And what they did was they basically dissolved parliament. There was a prime minister. If the president is incapacitated, the prime minister has to take over. They went, the U.S. Ambassador at the time went to the Haitian Supreme Court leader, basically uh, put in another made him interim government, um, and then the sitting prime minister was basically sidelined. And then they brought in some guy who had been living in Boca Raton, Florida for like 30 years and made him the interim, whatever he was, prime minister. This actually reminds me of the Lebanon case, but that we can talk about that another, another time, right?
Yeah.
And so they dissolved everything and basically created this government. What's significant about Haiti's occupation, though, is that this coup d'etat, which was led by the time you had the removal of the Haiti's president, in that evening, and I write about this because I have like a timeline of the insertion of the beginning of the occupation. You already had hundreds of U.S., France, and Canadian soldiers on the ground in Haiti, and they took over. The U.S. had this special mission, but then two members of the UN Security Council were able to get the UN to send a so-called peacekeeping mission that basically hid this was a coup d'etat. So US and France, were able to write up the documents, which we found out, by the way, by Dominique Villepin, had already written this document on February 25th, that Haiti was about to be taken over, had already sent this to the Security Council. And we published this document on Black Agenda Report a few years ago when these UN archives, part of them were open, right? And
Yeah.
so the UN comes in, right? So through the two members of the Security Council who caused the coup d'état, were able to get the UN to basically take over Haiti in what they call Chapter 7
Right.
invasion. And Chapter 7 means Chapter 7 is only used when there's civil war. There was no civil war in Haiti. There were protests, right? There were anti-government protests, there were counter protests, and so
I
on.
see. I
But
see.
there was no civil war, but also that the U.S. had been funding these ragtag groups of people in the Dominican Republic. Guy Philippe, who was leading one of them, and the media. If you read the media, it's almost as if, this ragtag group of few couple hundred people were about to take over, and Haiti, this president needs to leave right now, and he
Hmm.
refused to resign. But then the narrative is that he resigned. So the UN comes in and takes over and has the longest occupation, one of the longest occupations in Haiti, because the
14
UN comes
years.
in and basically hides the fact that this was a coup d'etat. And they created something called the Core Group. And the Core
See.
Group is a bunch of, they call themselves Friends of Haiti, that have basically controlled what happens with the occupation. What's interesting about this is also it was Brazil under Lula who took over the military wing of the occupation. And so we were being occupied by Brazilian soldiers. And Lula spent almost $1 billion in Haiti because he thought Brazil would get a seat on the Security Council. So they thought, let's do all this stuff for, this is why I always talk about the leftism of the Americas crumble at the door of Haitian
Yeah.
sovereignty, because you have the participation of Lula taking the lead in this. And so this is what we have. So under this occupation, you have um, So then the U.S. can basically um, take off its occupation and put it on the UN, what I call the multilateral, multinational, multiracial occupation, because the UN soldiers are from all over the world, from African
Right.
countries, from Asian countries. And then when the WikiLeaks papers were released, it shows that they said, oh, this is the perfect time because it's the cheapest way for the US to get its foreign policy objectives without having to put boots on the ground and having all these countries have buy-in in the occupation of Haiti. Now, the UN occupation of Haiti lasted from 2004 to 2017. In that, the UN brought cholera to Haiti that killed 40,000 people because they were dumping feces in the main water in the central part of the country that sickened a million and killed 40,000. You also have major sex crimes that are still
Yes.
being prosecuted today. The UN never apologized, never paid restitution, and so on. But we still have the core group, which actually makes decisions. And what I have to say is Haiti's been under occupation since 2004. The UN has had a mandate in Haiti. The UN is involved in Haiti's rule since 2004, and they are still there. And so, for example, so before that, though, in 2010, and this is what really set up everything that we're seeing today. Haiti does not have a state. In 2004, when the U.S. invaded and removed our elected president, Haiti had 7,000 parliamentary members, members of Congress, and so on and so forth. Today, they have zero. And this happens under occupation. In 2010, under Obama, Hillary Clinton changed the election results, and this is in the WikiLeaks papers. This has been written about. If you look at Center for Economic Policy Research, and they demonstrate this. If you look at The Nation, they have a whole series of WikiLeaks and Haiti papers. Hillary Clinton, so they wanted to have elections. Their candidate did not make it. Michel Martelly, which is the who was a musician,
Hmm.
and also a right wing neo Duvalierist. Duvalier was our dictator for 36 years, and so Hillary Clinton flies to Haiti and threatened to put the sitting president on a plane out of Haiti if he doesn't agree to the changing of the first round went through. Martelly did not make the first round, and they wanted one guy to get off so that Martelly would make the second round. Mind you, in the meantime, Brian Berletic, who I like and always shows up on this show, always talks about the information. This is the U.S. superpower taking
Right.
over the information, the National Endowment for Democracy, funding the so-called, opposition, and so
Hmm.
on, right? And so what you have is funding Martelly. They funded his campaign. This man, they hired a PR firm who I've met some of the people in the PR firm to make him. So Hillary Clinton changed the election result and put this man in power. Mind you, only 18% of the population voted. The majority of the population were left out of the elections. And so so you have the installation of what they call the PHTK, bald-headed party, whatever, that has been in control through the U.S. And so fast forward, right? So 2004, you put Martelly in power, and then he has no mandate, but he's run under. And then you have Jovenel Moise, who was brought in after him,
Right.
and who under the Organization of American States also plays a role as doing U.S.'s dirty work under bad election. There are protests all over, and there are protests in Haiti against Martelly, and because of corruption and so on and so forth, and also the IMF wanting Haiti to remove fuel subsidies for the people, which raised
About
inflation
hundred
by
percent.
40%. Yeah, more than that, exactly, right.
Yeah, it
And
was
so
100%.
you have all that, and then Jovenel Moise is assassinated because the Haitian elite, they're fighting with each other, but he's assassinated by Colombians, right? And these Colombians are
Yes.
everywhere.
And nobody, like, correct me if I'm wrong. That is still unclear. The assumption was that the U.S. was involved,
The
effectively
U.S.
using
was involved,
Colombians.
and so much of the is now secret, right? So much of the proceedings, and what's fascinating is that some of this assassination trial is being done in the U.S., and we wonder where the U.S. get the jurisdiction. Part of it is because U.S. resident citizens were part of this, and the U.S. is hiding a lot of information because this FBI came into Haiti and took all the information and left, and so we don't know who's behind it, but people know that it was like the party. So you have the assassination, and you have continuous protests. And after the assassination, what happens is the prime minister, so-called prime. There were two prime ministers. One was just fired, and the other one was about to come in, but he wasn't put in place yet. And so the core group, which still runs Haiti, basically decided with a tweet who would be Haiti's prime minister, which would be this
And
guy
just to be
named
clear, the
Alia.
core group is associated with the United Nations. Just
The
so,
United Nations, and it's a bunch of groups that include Brazil, the European Union,
right.
Germany, and that basically make decisions. They're very, they are integral in Haiti's political culture. And so my point is, if we get to this moment, it's through occupation. It's under foreign occupation that Haiti is where it is. And so and people have to remember that. So they install this prime minister. And this is where you start having the discourse around gangs, because people were protesting over and over again. And then they would come in and say, well, it's just these gangs that are wreaking havoc in Haiti.
I
And
see.
so what they did was basically dismiss these protests as if they're gangs doing that. And I sent you this thing because a group of grassroots organizations in Haiti, castigated
Mhm.
the UN, and the
Yes.
UN is very much, we're under UN occupation. So let's be real, the UN is very much part of this collusion over Haitian sovereignty, denying Haitian sovereignty. Is they said Gutierrez, the UN is responsible for the gangsterization of Haiti. It's
Hmm.
not, so our protests are legitimate. But what's happened is over the years, and to be fair, there's always been armed groups in Haiti used by the elite. Haiti is run by an oligarchy of non-black people, by the way. So Biggio, who was Gilbert Biggio, who's like the richest person in the Caribbean. Also, I think he was the no, it's Bulos. It's either Bulos and Biggio. These 10 families, if you look them up. One of them was
Hmm.
like the Israeli consulate in Haiti. And so these are the elite. And so they've always used armed groups because Haiti's a poor country. You can always, they have all the guns. They own all the ports where the guns come through. They can always, so they've used these young people, for example, to go against their business adversaries, and that's always been the case. But under PHTK, the government, the party installed by Hillary Clinton, that's when you really have a rise of armed groups, goons by the government, to go against the popular movements, to go into these neighborhoods. And what's happened the past couple of years in the power vacuum is that these armed groups have actually become more independent than normal, even though they're not as independent as people think, because Haiti does not manufacture guns. All the guns come through the U.S. through these private ports or to the Dominican Republic, which is a country, we share two countries on one island. And so this is where we are. We are here because in 2004, the US, France, and Canada removed our elected president. And this is the most exceptional example of neo-colonial, neo-imperial sabotage, where you're able to remove presidents, and for the past 20 years have installed prime ministers, presidents, and basically disbanded any kind of elected official that Haiti has. So there's
Yeah.
now
They
the
destroyed
worst
the
part of
state.
it, and I'm gonna stop because I know I've been going for a while, but the worst part of it is in 2000 last spring, the US convinced CARICOM to basically say, we need to do something about Haiti. And Mia Motley, who's also vying for the Secretary General job of the UN, the Prime Minister of Barbados, they basically handpicked a group of Haitians and basically brought them to, with Blinken, and basically said, we're going to create a Haitian, a revolving presidency, a transitional presidential council of 9 people that they handpicked. And these people all had to agree to allow foreign invasion of the country in order to be part of the conversation. And Mia
I
Motley
saw
played a
that.
key role in forcing that. And then they went all the way to Kenya and brought in mercenaries
Yes.
to be in Haiti. So there's a group of like, I think, 800 or so, 500 or so Kenyan mercenaries who are just chilling in Haiti. 3 of them got killed recently, but this is what's happening. So we are under complete occupation. And so for people to know that, the way the media presents Haiti as if there's always, violence is endemic, these people can't rule themselves, they killed their president and everything has been bad. The biggest gangsters in Haiti is the US government, the United Nations, the Organization of American States, and the core group.
All right. I have we have about 6 minutes. That
I
is a
know.
fantastic rundown. No, do not apologize. You're perfectly fine. You gave a rundown of it in a way that it gives context. Context is needed because otherwise If you just start with the story and say, okay, well, what about the indictment? You miss the other stuff of how you got to the point, which is why I say, how do we get here? How do we get to this particular point? On the radio show, we used to have somebody who would say, hands off Haiti, hands off Haiti. And you would get other people get into fights saying, well, the state seems to have collapsed. You need to do something. And your point is, they have been doing something the entire way through, and everything that they've done has made it worse. Who is Jimmy Cherizier? I think that's the last name.
Jimmy Pierre is one of the most prominent, I guess, armed group leaders. I don't call them gangs because I think it diminishes what's happening. And these guys, Jimmy Pierre was a former police, and these are paramilitaries, I think. And so he's one of the more prominent so-called gang leaders that was able to actually unite smaller groups, and they control Port-au-Prince. And people have to remember, Haiti has 12 million people all over, right? So the Port-au-Prince is the capital city. There are people everywhere else. Haiti's predominantly agriculture, but anyway, so he's for me he's the boogeyman for the U.S. because there are other groups. There's this guy named Ezel who's actually much more notorious, and people are wondering where he's getting his money. They're like in fatigues and uniforms and bigger arms than what Cherizier has, and so he's the one. And I think this indictment is actually a farce in the sense that it's actually allowing this notion that, because I don't know if you've heard, Eric Prince signed some kind of deal. Eric Prince from Blackwater signed some kind of deal with the illegitimate. Whatever deal is signed with Haiti is illegitimate because there's no government. There's no government. But he signed a deal to go to Haiti, use drones, and kill people, and then sooner or later will be in charge of Haiti's tax revenue, right? So
That is outrageous.
Right. So
That's outrageous.
is one of the people that's been indicted, but indicted for receiving cash, small amounts of cash from the U.S. From his so-called supporters in the U.S. and so on. Now, if the U.S. really wanted to do something, it could actually enforce the arms embargo that is coming in. But you're allowing Eric Prince to ship thousands of weapons to Haiti. That you can stop the flow of weapons to Haiti. And what the U.S. is having a problem is they cannot have another United Nations. The UN is refusing because of Russia and China refusing to send another mission to Haiti. They want another cheap mission to Haiti to wreak havoc again. So Cherizier is, I think, the so-called fall guy, but he's given more international interviews than anybody. If anybody knows where to find Cherizier, that's what I'm saying. Like, to me, this is just a boogeyman that is being used for U.S. to make it seem like they're doing something in order to maybe give Eric Prince some kind of leverage so when he goes in there so he can make some money. But to me, that's not the issue. The issue is what the U.S. is doing in terms of importing guns, supporting the oligarchy, and also enabling more violence in the country.
Let's see. We have 2 minutes. How? This is a very broad question, and sometimes it's very hard to put things back together after they're broken, and that assumes that people even want to put them back together. I had a friend of mine, by the way, that went to Haiti. She lived there for 3 to 6 months, and the side of Haiti that she showed was not something that you necessarily see on media. Like, she was showing oceans, streams, mountains. She was showing all of this stuff, this landmass that's gorgeous, and it's like, yeah, you don't typically see that under normal circumstances. How does this get put back together? And again, this assumes that there's a concerted and honest want to even try to put it back together.
Right. Well, there is from the people. In early 2021, Jovenel Moïse, the president that was assassinated, tried to extend his mandate. It was over in February, and he refused. And so there are a group of Haitian communities. They came together. All the various groups came together, and they have like Haitian Solutions. And they're the ones that had like a 2-year plan, a transition plan to get back on track, to get elections, to get local elections, to have a national conversation. The U.S. completely poo-pooed all of that, just completely erased that, refused to acknowledge, and basically supported this prime minister, this rogue prime minister that they put in charge, that wreaked havoc on the country. So part of the way this gets put back together is for us to get rid of the UN and the U.S. occupation of Haiti right now. We need to get these foreigners out of the country. We need to get Eric Prince out of the country. And, I always say, Haiti won its independence at a time when it was most improbable, when slavery was entrenched in the world, in the Western Hemisphere, and they emerged independent and free and defeated the most powerful military in the time. That time is coming. I have full faith that we will come back. And that's where we are.
One last question. I'm sorry. I had access. Are the protests part of that? I mean, without agitation, nothing happens.
Without
And
agitation. But what's happening, I think the armed groups have actually limited protests. They forced the people that I think one of the things that the armed groups have done, they forced the people in retreat. And so in especially in the capitals, there've been protests, but not as much as before.
I
Right. And so
see.
that's so
I
one of
see.
the things I think, and that's why we think this is like a sinister thing. And people always like to blame internal politics and say, oh, these people are just corrupt anyways. I'm just like, who's more corrupt than Donald Trump? This is the US. Who's more corrupt than the US government? But it's easy to say, oh, these Haitians are just corrupt and so on and so forth. But it is constant Western meddling. A small country, even though it's one of the most populous in the Caribbean, it's constant meddling. And so I think, we need to get rid of all these people. We need to get rid of US imperialism. We need to get rid of these so we can take control of our own destiny. And I have faith that we will.
Dr. Pierre, thank you for this. Great breakdown, great explanation. Yeah, I deeply appreciate it. Dr. Jemima
Jemima,
Pierre,
yes.
thank you. Okay, I got it. Dr. Jemima Pierre. The thing in my mind is like, is it Jemima, Jemima, Jemima? You kept saying Jemima.
It's
It's
not
like,
the
which one do you
pancakes.
want to
It's not
say?
the pancakes. It's not the
Yeah, it's
pancakes.
like say the opposite of the thing that you're built to say. All right, Dr. Jemima Pierre. She is Distinguished Faculty of Arts, Professor of African American and Diaspora.
African and
This,
African Diaspora Studies at the Social Justice Institute in the University of British Columbia.
thank you. Also, I have you at. I have one more for you. I have faculty associate at the Department of Anthropology at the
Anthropology
University. Okay,
in British
at British
Columbia. Yeah.
Columbia. Okay.
I'm in two
She's
departments. Yeah.
Oh, I see. I see what's going on. She's also a research associate at the Center for Study of Race, Gender, Class at the University of Johannesburg. And again, Black Agenda Report. Check her out. I know she says she doesn't write as often. You can look her up and find her other previous work. She has a really good breakdown of Haiti. Thank you for this.
Thanks so much for having me, Jamal. My
You
pleasure.
have a good one. Thank you. Bye bye.
All right, take care. Bye
All
bye.
right. That was a fantastic breakdown by Dr.